When we think about climate change, we often think about things like carbon dioxide, or we think of temperature. But Marie, you're looking at climate change from a different perspective, aren't you? You're looking at it from more of a biological perspective. Can you tell me something about that?
I look at the first level biological response. So I study phytoplankton. So phytoplankton live at the surface of the ocean, and they have a very high turnover rate. They can respond within hours to days to perturbation in their environmental conditions. And this makes them ideal indicator to study the impact of climate variability and climate change. Actually, in 2014, the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, recognized that they had low confidence in the understanding of how upwelling system in the equatorial region might change in response to El Niño variability.
So you mentioned El Niño, and this is a form of climate variability, which is a natural thing that occurs, so different from the current human-induced climate change that we're experiencing. What is El Niño and how does it work?
So El Niño has got two components, really. So the first one is an ocean component. This is the El Niño component. So it's characterized by an anomalous warming of the sea surface temperature in the tropical Pacific that is linked to perturbation in the atmospheric circulation patterns, which are known as the Southern Oscillation. So in actual fact, it's a coupled ocean atmosphere. So ocean is El Niño, atmosphere is Southern Oscillation, and we call this phenomenon the El Niño Southern Oscillation, abbreviated as ENSO. So it's a dominant mode of climate variability in the Earth's climate system, and it has a periodicity of 2 to 7 years. So in this periodicity, we encounter different type of events. Some are called El Niño, and generally they are associated with warming of the climate or of temperature, and La Niña, which might be more associated with cooling in the sea surface temperature in the tropical Pacific. So in principally I've studied the El Niño impact on the ocean biology, and in fact in recent years there has been more and more evidences that we can characterize the two types of El Niño. So the characterization is based on the location of the maximum sea surface temperature warming. So in the more classic type of El Niño, also called as a canonical or Eastern Pacific El Niño, the anomalous warming of SST occur on the eastern side of the tropical Pacific. And in contrast, in recent years, actually since the 1990s, there has been an increased number of what they call the Central Pacific El Niño, where the anomalous warming of SST, the maximum anomalous warming of SST, occur in the Central Tropical Pacific.
Okay, so we've got these two different types of El Niño, and this is all related to how the ocean physics works and how the atmospheric physics works. Yep. But you said you've been studying the biology, so how does this connect to the biology?
To study how it connects to the biology, basically we use some climate indices of El Niño variability to know when we have an Eastern Pacific El Niño or a Central Pacific El Niño, and we study the impact. So the impact on the physics, different physical variables are important for the phytoplankton, to study the phytoplankton response. So mostly sea surface temperature, how it changes in sea level, changes in wind patterns and wind direction, its strength, and changes in precipitation, which might change the input from the rivers. The wind might change the mixing of the water column. It might bring nutrients to the surface, which would allow phytoplankton to grow. So this is why it's very important. It might also change the currents, which again might move nutrients around and allow phytoplankton to grow. And the sea level and sea surface temperature are good cues to know where you have maybe a packing up of warm water. So you might have more stratification, less access to nutrients for the phytoplankton. So these are important physical variables, and they will have an influence on the biology. So phytoplankton, the primary producers, and these are at the base of the food chain. So any changes in the base of the food chain, in the phytoplankton, will have a knock-on effect on fisheries.
We want to study all these things. It sounds to me that El Niño is a really big global phenomenon. We could see from what you were saying that it affects the whole Pacific and even other areas as well. So we need a global perspective to look at these We can use satellites to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. So satellites are perfect. They can give us a global view on the oceans. We can use a range, and actually we need to use a range of observation data. So some are from satellite observation. There has been a project, especially within the ESA, so European Space Agency, Climate Change Initiative, the CCI project, where scientists have produced the longest climate quality control time series of different variables, so including ocean color, which will give us some information on the phytoplankton that lives in the water, time series of sea surface temperature, of sea level, and we also use reanalysis product, for instance, reanalysis product of wind from ECMWF.